have to silence it because the guy uses some profanity. Oops.
Camera! I got that on camera.
I just don't know what just happened.
Okay. Dude, I got that on.
You need rescue? No.
Tim! I fucking filmed that shit! Oh, police brutality and shit!
They didn't mean it.
Oh my god, no, they didn't mean it.
Hey.
I fucking got that on film!
Alright, I just wish the guy wasn't cussing so much.
Dude.
Alright, I put that on there. It looks like an accident that happened. The officer somehow hit his foot, ran into the guy. I was looking for material. I decided to put that up there. Not sure why. Alright, so this is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report. It's a one-man show where I do everything from the production to the research to the websites, social media, everything, and it is unscripted, unedited, so I fly by the seat of my pants, and whatever happens, happens, and that's how we roll. Usually what I do is I start off with just the news that I'll be covering on the national page, which are some basic stories, and then I go into more detailed news stories that I want to cover with you. So let's go ahead and get that started now, and let me make sure I choose the right screen, and here we go. All right, I just put this story out about a 26-year-old morgue worker. One of those strange stories where she was arrested. They did a DNA test and they revealed that it was the baby of the person that she was supposed to autopsy, and they are assuming some necrophiliac intercourse there. Truly disgusting. A little humor at Hillary's expense. Bill Marler came out. He's an injury attorney and food poisoning expert, and he went over some of the foods that he would not touch, and he gave basically a list of 6 of them that essentially he deems to be poisoning, and he would not put them in his system. Asking for some thoughts on this one, whereas the new study came out and said that pregnant women should be tested for depression during and after the pregnancy. And this came out from the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force. And they said that there is evidence out there suggesting that there's maybe a likelihood of some form of maternal mental illness either during or after pregnancy. And let's see, we got this guy, a poor kid, Tallahassee boy that is missing, so go ahead and share that. Whenever I see those, I try to put them out there. This was a story that was put out by Greenberg, I believe his name is. The same guy that put out the Snowden story. The U.S. intervention in Libya was such a smashing success that its sequel is coming, and he's being funny there, facetious. And this is a little video about a guy that can control this helmet, this robotic device through his brain. Let's take a quick listen. He's prepping it now. There he goes, okay. See, he's controlling the device on the ground. Get up and take off. Interesting video. If you have some time, check it out. It is on The Scoop National News. Interesting technology, possibly a little scary technology. JFK International Airport, passengers on flight from Mexico were screened by customs, but they were not screened by customs. They were allowed to walk right by. These are people coming from Cancun to New York. They were sent to a domestic gate, and they're saying it was due to an airline error. This isn't the first time it's happened, folks. It's happened a few times, and people are a little concerned as to why this is happening, and it's happening in Central America a lot too. So, or with individuals coming out of Central America. This is an individual that just talks about the VA and how the problems haven't gotten any better. There's still a hurry up and wait. It's concerning to me since I am in the VA, and I think I've been waiting 3 to 5 years just to get an appointment to go into VA to get set up. Here we go.
Back to being worse than it was a year ago.
From this past September to now, I've been down here 14 times, and I keep getting the same
Every time I come down, nothing gets done.
Person after person, still appointments being canceled, waiting for those appointments, wait times on it. Things got temporarily a little bit better, but they're now waiting a long.
And that's a travesty, folks, that we're doing this to the individuals that went out and fought for this country, that gave all for this country. And it's hard to get appointments. When they get appointments, they're running into difficulties, and it's a major sham, the VA, in my mind. Not sure why I wanted to be part of it, but it doesn't matter because I've been waiting for 3 to 5 years, and I'll probably wait another 5 years. This article was just about the U.S. and how it destabilized Europe, and that title's a little misleading because it actually goes into Austria and Germany and how they're ruining the culture, the fabric of Europe, essentially with their policies towards immigration and migration. France, this is about the highway. This is over by that Calais area, and how it's just ascending into chaos. There's a video on it, and it just talks about a lot of the lawlessness that's taking place with the migrants out there. If you probably heard, the Oregon militiamen, they were arrested a couple of the Bundy brothers yesterday, and they shot and killed this individual. Now, his daughter, who's also in the picture, states that his hands were up, he was giving in. The police say he was not responding, him and Bundy were not responding to their demands, and somehow he ended up getting shot and killed tragically. He was the spokesperson for the militia group. This talks about a U.S. Nazi hunter that's still here in the United States, based out of New York. This was just a fluff story. Driver dies while being ejected through his phone book because he was driving, watching porn, and doing other stuff. A travesty here. Dead woman holding a shovel discovered under a foot of snow. It appears to me that she had some kind of heart attack or something like that. Fell. The snow continued to come down. Nobody noticed she was missing. Some kids stumbled upon her. This is a police chase that took place in Chicago yesterday after a armed robbery. Let's see what else we got here. I tell you, we got some real sick stories out there today. This is a dead gambler. They embalmed him and propped him up at the poker table for their final poker game. This was done down in Puerto Rico. Some of these stories, I just sit here scratching my head. This is one that Lori submitted, and it's gotten a lot of hits. It's an older video, but we're sharing. She said pretty cool. It's about an injured dolphin who approached a diver for help, and it was interesting, and it's getting a lot of attention. 7,800 people reached and 14 shares. Is sugar the new crack? And they're primarily not the effects of it, but the addictive qualities behind it. Citizen ranking, I've discussed this before. A lot of people just aren't familiar with it. I posted again. This is actually from Cop Block, and it basically looks at a variety of social issues with individuals. So a cop can pull you over. They can see that it's Frank Abbruzzino. They can run this program. I forget essentially what the program's called. And it calculates a score based upon your social media activity, some of your emails, any commentary, and it just takes all these, this algorithm takes all this information together and comes up with a rating. And it tells you if, when a cop approaches, if there's a probability that you may be a jerk, if you may do X, Y, Z, and it basically eliminates the due process because the cop comes up prepared for a confrontation. If you're someone like me, and I'm sure I got all this stuff from the Uncensored Report out there, or even my scoop page is tied to me, so I'm probably not a good citizen. Rankings probably not high, and so when they come up to my car, they may be alarmed. Heartbreaking story about an Australian tourist campaign to save this Cambodian man with this horrendous growth on his face. Uber get ridiculous, scary, and this is just about in Bradenton, Uber driver arrested for pointing a gun at his passenger. Uber's been getting a lot of bad press lately. A lot of bad press. That's that psycho cop that they're calling him. To me, it seemed like an accident. This is the owner broke every bone in this poor dog's body. Tragedy. Hate to see stuff like that. And then you got this video where a guy's riding down the street with a dog on the back as a passenger. Look at that. That's cute. Alright. Let's stop it. Let's see what else you got. Mammoth bones, 10,000-year-old mammoth bone found in, was Oregon State University under research field as they were doing some excavating there. They found it. Police searching for a 71-year-old woman, no pictures or anything, just essentially an identity of her. Probably like Joanne Quinn says there, she has dementia. Let's see what else we got here. This guy, my teacher shamed me when I couldn't read 30 years ago, and I ran into him at a bar. Just an interesting story about karma. Report DHS incapable of accurately tracking visa overstays. We've known about this for a while. Unfortunately, only 233 people really care about the fact that our Department of Homeland Safety cannot track visa overstays. These are, when we're talking visa overstays, we're talking immigrants from Central America, South America, Syria, Middle East, Russia, Asia. And they can't track them, but people don't care. 233 people are like, yeah, that's interesting, but the rest don't care. Another waste of our taxpayer money. 206 people. That's all it cares about, the fact that they're tracking herpes on space flights. Why? What's this? This talks about the Wounded Warrior Project. We're going to listen to it real quick. There's a CBS investigation out there, and I've heard stuff about this before, where they looked at Wounded Warrior Project, and they find that they're spending money on lavish hotels, conferences, expensive meals, and all that stuff. So let's take a quick listen.
And drink it.
Let me rewind it.
Sorry, but I'll be
quick
damned.
one.
If you're going to take hardworking Americans' money and drink it and waste it, instead of helping those brave men and women who gave you the freedom to walk this face of the earth.
And you see this all too often. I tell you what, I did it on an analysis on the local YMCA here in Venice. Everybody loves them. They say, oh, they give back to the community so much. They're so good for people. And they are. They try to do good. I get that, and I appreciate everything they try to do. But the administration there, or whoever's running the operation, basically isn't really being I don't want to say disingenuous. They're not. When I looked at their numbers, I believe the number was 3% was going back into the community in terms of scholarships or money back to the community. 3%. The rest went primarily towards salaries, rent, and stuff like that. And when I shared it out there, somebody said, oh, you got a bias. I'm like, there's no bias. Just look at the numbers. The numbers tell the story for itself. I got these numbers off their forms, their nonprofit forms. And people wouldn't, you have the trolls on there that will just deny the deniers and say, oh, you're wrong. You're just coming after the Y. And I wasn't. I like the guys at the Y. I was a little concerned that only 2 to 3% was going back to the community. And they're a nonprofit that a lot of people donate a lot of money to. The city is demanding a written essay, which is costing them about $1,000 to get a handgun permit. I don't recall that being part of the second, do you? China telling George Soros, hey, don't get involved with that in our currency. George Soros, if you don't know, a billionaire out there involved in many currencies and many political issues. This guy is a dangerous person, and if you watch me, you should know that. I was one of the first to report this yesterday about this Milwaukee man who planned mass shootings at a Masonic temple, and I got it through Pam Geller's page, and then it all started coming out today. Pam Geller is very active on keeping up with the Muslim community, both here and abroad. And basically, what puzzles me about this is you got the FBI. They go out and they find out this guy may be interested in committing this heinous crime. So they go out there and try to sell him the machine guns. What they're doing, if they were just a normal citizen, would be illegal. What he is doing would be illegal. But then on the flip side, you got over in Texas, the Planned Parenthood. The individual went out to film the selling of the body parts, the fetuses, and they indict him and not Planned Parenthood. They say that he was out there illegally trying to buy body parts. Well, yeah, but where's the intent? There is no intent. He didn't intend on going through with it, just like the FBI didn't intend on going through this. And what about, how can you be penalized as someone trying to purchase body parts, but not penalize the people trying to sell the body parts? Again, that was just a political witch hunt. Not sure how I got off on that. It just hit me in my head, the comparison of the two. Chinese creating monkeys with an autism gene. The two escape guys, very bad, very dangerous. California falling into the ocean, El Nino having its impact, and that's a low-income residence. So a lot of people are worried about that. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to go? This is the only place I had. It's low income. It's what is it? housing series 8, subline 8. I can't remember what the terminology is. All right, Google plans to help refugees stay connected. They're spending over $5 million. I said, yeah, that's great. Why don't you help some Americanos here stay connected? Investigation, and 2 people have now died from drinking this toxic mixture of racing fuel and Mountain Dew. That's 2 people, folks. Dillard's mother says saleswoman body shamed her daughter. I'll put that up there. Duct tape challenge. You're seeing this a lot with teens, and it's getting dangerous. In this one situation, it required a person to get major surgery, as you can see. But it's a travesty. It's going on out there now. It's a bit viral with a lot of the teens. Ford recalled their Ranger pickups, and there's the range again. Let me see what else we got here. And people might call me crazy, might call it political, but you got here and you started, the article covers Clinton loves the idea of appointing Obama to the Supreme Court. And you got to wonder, is that her way of floating out there that, hey, Obama, you and I know an indictment's coming soon. I fucked up with it. I screwed up with all this email. If you put pressure on Loretta Lynch not to indict me, which he can do that, then when I get the presidency, because that'll free me up, it'll enhance the probability of me getting the presidency, I will nominate you to the Supreme Court. This stuff happens all the time, folks. And it's not just the Democrats. Republicans do it all the time. And you're seeing it just with her and with her Clinton Foundation. She's an old hand at it. Something to watch there, especially if she does get the presidency. Activists behind Planned Parenthood video, I just covered that a second ago, probably too early. This is Megyn Kelly. Here, you know, the issue with this is she's out there saying, oh, I'll be fair and impartial. You know, I watch her. Look at her. She's so stiff. She's like this the whole time. It's almost like she's reading off a card every time. And I almost hate watching her. She's a beautiful young lady. She's intelligent. I think she's a lawyer, but I just don't like watching her. But the whole Trump controversy, he said, hey, look, if she's going to be there, I'm not going to go there. The issue is the last time wasn't a question, it was a statement. It was asked in a manner that made me look bad. I don't want her on there. Fox came back and said, well, you're not going to dictate it to us. And he said, fine, see how much money you make without me being on there. And a lot of people don't realize that is how much money these guys, these NBCs, ABCs, CBS, CNN, are making off these debates. They're not just doing it because they want to get the political message out there. They want the citizenry to be able to ask the president information. If it's going on the air, the only reason they're doing it is to make money. Let's see. She also interviewed Michael Moore, who is a joke. Gangs of male Moroccan migrants take over a Stockholm train station, groping and doing all kinds of stuff in there. They're saying caffeine doesn't give you heart palpitations, and I think that's about it. I think I've covered about 15 minutes, which I tried to do 10 to 15 minutes. Doomsday Clock Countdown, that was an interesting article. This principal here who saved 2 children, and she ended up dying on this school bus incident yesterday. That story's on the Scoop. As all these stories are on the Scoop National News. So check that out, and let's check the stocks real quick. What are we looking at? Right now, futures are down 52, S&P down 4, and NASDAQ down 18. Oil is dropping. They're saying futures lower as oil and Boeing way ahead of the Fed statement, which I think the Fed statement comes out around 2:15. Normally, the Fed statement coming out won't mean much, but today they're putting some extra bearing on it. Hold on one second. Let me get to the right screen. Okay, there we go, and boom. All right. Now, we might as well go ahead and just talk a little bit about the, since the Fed statement is coming out, I just looked at the market. Continue this whole conversation, because what we're seeing out in the economic community and our economy isn't going to go away. And I keep talking about it daily because you're seeing it daily. You're seeing trillions of dollars being knocked off. You're seeing the Baltic Dry Index, which is almost evaporated. And sooner or later, we're going to start to feel that impact. When supplies don't leave China for a month, you're going to feel the impact here. You may not feel it during that month, but 2-3 months down the road, you are. And we're going to start to feel this whole global economic shortfall. shortfall. It's a rapid decline, and a lot of people are saying that it's going to be greater than the recession that took place in 2008. Manufacturing activities imploding all over the planet. Global trade is down. You got jobs layoffs at an all-time high. You got Texas General Business just hit a 6-year low with their numbers, and the list just goes on and on. As I look at this article here and just see tons of stuff. One could argue that it was expected to what we saw, like Texas, I mentioned that. It was expected to see that drop because that's where all the oil industry is. And I've said, 43 oil companies have gone bankrupt, laid off 130,000 people. So you're going to see that impact. So some people will say, well, that was expected in Texas. But what about every other unusual thing that we're seeing across the areas? In Irwin, Tennessee, a rail terminal that has been continuously operating, for 135 years was permanently shut down. And now hundreds of workers have found themselves out of the jobs. What did that rail do? They delivered supplies. You're not seeing that anymore. It's been said that if you want to know what's really happening in the U.S., to watch the railroads, and if they're shutting down and they're not moving supplies, there's another issue. They're not moving supplies because supplies isn't coming over, as we've seen from the Baltic Dry Index. The rail traffic they say the rail traffic in Colorado slowed down so much that hundreds of engines are just sitting on the tracks doing absolutely nothing. But you don't hear about this. And it's important to hear about it. It's important for you to listen to me on this. And it's not that I'm an expert, it's that I'm doing the research and communicating the research that I'm finding out there. Because you're not going to hear it on major media. So you got to go to alternative media for this type of information. And if you were on alternative media and watching it over the course of the last year, you would have expected everything we're going through right now. And, if you want to consider, like I said, the rail companies, that's one thing. That's huge. Look at Union Pacific. Their revenues were down 15% last year. Again, that whole impact on moving supplies across the country. You see it in the emerging economic slowdown all around us. You see it. Sprint just laid 8% of its workforce off. GoPro, I talked about that, I think, last week, 7%. Walmart, 269 stores, about 10,000 employees. The banks. And instead of dealing with reality, what we're seeing is a lot of irrational optimists we saw from the president that are insisting that Wall Street's going to bounce back, that our economy is doing great. The CNBC is reporting that Goldman Sachs thinks the S&P will finish above 2,100. Right now, it's 1880, somewhere around there. I know it dropped yesterday, but I didn't take a look at it. So it's easy to sit there and say something that the economy is doing great, it's flourishing, all is going well. But if you look at all the different instances, from the railway to the Baltic Dry Index to the banks, the too big to fail, are laying off thousands of workers. One of my biggest clients in the medical billing industry, he wrote me over the weekend. He said, hey, look, my sister was laid off from her job, banking industry. And she's part of that whole too big to fail banks that are going through and laying off. Even though we helped all of them out through their economy, we gave them a ton of money, guess what? They're the ones that are laying off the employees. They're the ones that aren't getting us out loans unless we go through all these ropes. It's amazing what we're seeing out there, folks. And if you look back at 2008, that's what the banks did then. They started laying people off. They did exactly the same thing. And people need to start to realize that we are in a major league crisis that's coming up. And you're seeing it now. How bad is it going to be once we start to feel that domino effect of supplies not coming over for a month or any other issue out there? We just recently saw since last June, $15 trillion of global stock market wealth just wiped out, especially in the last few days. Gone. Disappeared. Up in smoke. But you can talk about these numbers until you're blue in the face, but if people aren't prepared, it doesn't matter. If people aren't listening and taking action, it's not going to matter. And you can't sit there and just have so much faith in Barack Obama, so much faith in Frank Abbruzzino and what we're saying. So much faith in the Federal Reserve, so much faith in mainstream media. If you do that, you're going to fall off a cliff. You need to get, I said that about Snopes yesterday. I put out an article on my national page And I talked about everybody just relies on these people. Did you know there's only two people, husband and wife? They're left leaning, and they go out there and do research just like I do research. But for some reason, everybody thinks they're the omniscient ones. Do your own research. To listen to them. Sure, they come up with good information just like I do. Take it all in, listen, make your own decision. And by now, most people that believe that they should prepare for the coming crisis have already prepared. I prepared. I got dry food for up to 6 months. I got water for up to 6 months. You know, essentially what's going to happen is going to happen. I may be over-preparing. Possibly. I don't know. But I'd rather over-prepare than under-prepare. And that's the philosophy I'm going in with. The elections, we have the town hall just the other day, which we found out they were prepared questions. They were going over how to plot. I was going to play that video too. You got Donald Trump pulling out of the Fox one. I think it's tomorrow night, and basically Iowa's 5 days away, I think, or something like that. And if you look at this whole race, this whole presidential race of 2016, it's shaping up to be a bit disheartening. If you go back in recent memory and look at previous ones. Other than a form of entertainment and very low entertainment, you're getting the speeches, you're getting the debates, you're getting campaigns, slick TV ads. I saw a killer TV ad from Huckabee today that I thought was just great. He was doing, it was an ad to Hello. But you're seeing all this. It's inundating the public out there. And it's giving us basically little value. Rather than exhibiting the vitality of American democracy, it's sort of showing the hollowness of American democracy. And I was reading this article, Common Dreams, and they basically came out and they said, look, if you look at Iran, for example, they have politics there. They possess a considerable amount of substance when in their political arena. Their parties are very involved, whether favoring change or opposing it. You know, you're going to have the different viewpoints. But they understand the issues at stake. They understand the momentous implications. But here in the United States, in our national politics, it's a form of exhibitionism. It's about as genuine as pro wrestling, which means it's pretty much fake. And he just did that contrast between the two. And basically, you know, with these presidential campaigns out there, they ought to involve more competing coalitions of interest. I was watching Huckabee on Fox and Friends, and he said, look, the problem with America is it doesn't matter if you get a Republican or a Democrat in, because they're all being fed through the same corporate donors, and these corporate donors are dictating the direction they're going to go in. And he started, and they were talking about his campaign where it's more grassroots. He's like, I don't have the big donors. I'm out there. He's gone to all, I think it's 99 precincts in Iowa. He's got all small donations. Bernie Sanders is doing a similar approach. Donald Trump is financing his own thing. But he's out there and he says, you got to get rid of these investment banks. Get rid of these billionaires. Because what they're trying to do is install their preferred candidate into the White House. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or Democrat, because they're going to do what these big investors, what these people that have donated, contributed to them, they're going to go in the direction they want them to. And instead, the politicians should do like what I believe Huckabee's doing. He's out there. He's engaging them. He's educating them with his ideology. He's illuminating them with his thoughts on the political process. It may not be what they agree to, but he's out there trying. He's out there looking for an alternative solution. But what we're seeing now with the major candidates, the Hillarys out there, the Ted Cruz's, that they won't come close to ascribe to that. No, you look at the recent debates, and the commentary comes from it. It's painfully clear what's going on, folks. In these debates, they bait, they tease, they strut. Then they subject the candidates to statements and misstatements to hopefully time some kind of deconstruction so that they'll implode there on the stage. All in an effort to inflate their own importance while trivializing the whole proceedings that are taking place with these debates. And above all, the realm of national security, this election process, it promises not to just be a missed opportunity, but a complete bust the way it's going. You know, if you look at the whole global leadership, it's met with many failures, many disappointments. So you might imagine that if you go back, you look at what these candidates have said, both Republican and Democrat, they have plenty to talk about, but little substance, little action. And the rhetoric that comes from them. You know, you look at just take Islamic State, for example. You got the rhetoric that comes from Hillary. She promises to smash the would-be caliphate. Jeb Bush, defeat ISIS for good. Ted Cruz, I'm going to carpet bomb those bastards into oblivion. Donald, I'm going to bomb them and shut them out. And the list goes on. They talk tough. And I think even Huckabee in his interview said, these guys will talk and they'll tell you and make all kinds of promises. You don't see them. He goes, it doesn't matter. Republican and Democrat, same process. They follow these carefully scripted lines, and they're out there to perform two functions, basically. They elicit the applause, which they want. They want to certify the candidate as plenty tough. They want to spare the candidate from having to address matters for more deserving presidential attention than managing the fight on ISIL. And if you look at the hierarchy of challenges that are facing the United States, ISIS ranks up there on par with this Common Dreams guy said. It's on par of Sicily back in '43 when we liberated the island, and it was a prelude to liberating Europe. That was one of the first fronts we came in. The German occupation of Sicily did not pose a direct threat to the Allied cause. In comparison, and this is where he compared it to the presidential cropped candidates, that they're unable to grasp, they're unable to articulate, or choose to ignore those matters that are straight outright right in front of their face, that would fall under a commander-in-chief's purview. Instead, they compete with each other, vowing to liberate the 21st century from the equivalent of a Sicily. And they do this in an effort to demonstrate why they would be good for that office. But what we need them to do is talk about the issues that are near and dear, the national security concerns out there, Israel, immigration, Middle East. You know, just look at the war on terror. This war on terror. You got nearly 15 years after the war was launched, back with George Bush. It wasn't the most powerful military in the world, the finest fighting force in the history. We won it. But why isn't a victory in sight yet if we won that? Think about it. Ever since 9/11, the United States has invaded, occupied, bombed, raided, otherwise established military presence in numerous countries across the Islamic world. Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, or Pakistan. No, Afghanistan. Pakistan we've gone into, but we deny it. Iraq. The list goes on. And how are we doing in these areas? As the world's strongest military force. And given the resources expended and the lives lost or ruined, we're not doing that well, folks. We're out there intending to promote stability and reduce the jihadism, but what we're doing is we're reversing that. It's become an anti-Americanism among many of the Muslims out there. It's doing the exact opposite of what they wanted it to do, and it's become amazingly disappointing. And the whole record of this whole campaign is amazingly disappointing. For some reason, I keep looking here at the screen instead of up there. I wish this camera was down here because I'm always looking here at the screen. I forget to look up because I feel like I'm doing this. What are some other issues? Nuclear weapons. More than 70 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what purpose do the nuclears serve? How many nuclear weapons and delivery systems does the United States actually need? Does Iran actually need a nuclear bomb? Does Saudi Arabia? You know, but that doesn't stop people like Obama. Obama's out there and he's announced plans to modernize our nuclear technology. He's spending $1 trillion on there. And in the modernization, he's going out to make a smaller nuclear bomb that is more capable, has the flexibility to use in a war versus the big Hiroshima type bomb. And I think it was in Iraq, in the desert, and they showed all these people that had radiation poisoning from the different bomb technologies that we used on it. I should look that up and talk about it one day. Energy. Give me the ability. We got a ton of oil out there, natural gas reserves. We got our shale oil. I've talked about the shale digging and the impact of all that has had. And basically, it's ensuring that we have energy security. How are they going to handle that? Because right now, that's a big issue. You've got the oil price. I think it's near 30 today. It's down today. It's killing the stock market. This war from Saudi Arabia on our shale, or our war against Russia driving down the price of oil to destroy that country. Whatever the true factor is there, it's driving shale business companies out of business here. Like I said, 43 companies, 130,000 employees, good paying quality jobs. What's this next presidential candidate going to do about that? You know, the article that I read on Common Dreams talked about the whole assassination. Are they going to normalize assassinations? What benefit and what costs are they? You have Bush out there. He pioneered the whole practice of using missiles armed with drones as to get out there and do some extrajudicial killing, even of Americans. Barack Obama, he expanded it. He made it routine to go out there and kill people, even Americans. And I get it. I get that the technique's effective in liquidating leaders and lieutenants of terror groups. What is less clear, though, is the benefit of having these state-sponsored essential assassinations, the cost behind them, the incidental killings that take place of non-combats, which has happened. So what are their positions on that? What are their positions on Europe and everything they're going through? You know, ever since World War I, we've been back there. We've basically have looked upon Europe as our responsibility. We've helped them to succeed, helped them to get rich. We love Europe. We love their castles. We love their cuisine. We wanted to help them after World War II. We went ahead and we started up NATO. We'll defend them at all means. Our commitment has enabled France, Germany, Britain, and other countries to recover from the World War II, become strong, become prosperous, become democratic countries. And today, all of Europe essentially is home free. I don't know about free, because I look at a lot of the tyranny going on out there. But what's the position on that? What's the position on debt? We just named a huge debt that we're looking at. I think $19 trillion. 19 trillion is the mark. And does this constitute its threat to national security? You know, you had Bush and Obama out there. They tripled the national debt since 2000. Now it's looking at 19 trillion. Where do they stand on this national debt? What will they do to handle this national debt? But these aren't questions being asked. Right? We have Megyn Kelly out there asking him why he treats women bad. Why the perception is. When I'm talking about Trump. And what we need to remember is that the World Congress is out there to authorize the debt ceiling, increase it, provide Republicans with an excuse for all their political posturing out there, laying responsibility for all the red ink on Obama's feet. But it's both parties. And regardless who takes the prize in November, the United States will continue to accumulate a tremendous amount of debt. And it's not a trivial rate, 19 trillion. If our next president is a Republican, will he keep mum? In either case, this whole they need to approach this national debt from a national security viewpoint and find balance. And it's something to think about. But are they talking about that? I don't know. You know, are they talking about gun control? You know, it came out, and I just briefly wanted to touch on this, how they're going to use all doctors, not just psychiatrists, all doctors to screen adults for depression. And this is according to a government task force. They're recommending it and what it's viewed as by many, by myself, is a backdoor to gun control. There's so many backdoors, you know, you can't really, there's no more iron anymore. You can't produce the lead for the ammunition. They're buying up tons of ammunition at the APA and all these different federal agencies that don't really need it, and they're buying substantial amounts, like the quantity you need if you're going into war. But you got this U.S. Preventive Service Task Force out there, and they said healthcare workers should ask patient questions to determine if they have symptoms of depression. Why? And is this a concern, especially with the fact that they're now trying to push this whole mental disability thing on and tie it to getting a gun or maintaining your gun? And a lot of people feel it sets a dangerous precedence. You got physicians out there ratting on people. They could diagnose you with mental issues, and next thing you know, your second rights are going out the door. So then patients are going to come in. These guys could be nut jobs, suicidal, but they're going to keep mum because they don't want their doctor running to the government. And you might say that's crazy, that's conspiracy, but there was an excellent point, and I believe it was InfoWars that brought it up, and they talked about this New York State guy, and he was a veteran, ex-detective. He wasn't getting a lot of sleep. He was mentally. He went in to see the doctor, and the doctor basically said he was mentally unfit at his hospital visit. And this is because the guy was just having insomnia. He wasn't mentally unfit. Basically, next thing you know, the sheriff showed up at their door saying, "We want your guns. We want to inventory your guns. We want to take your guns away." And it was all based upon what this doctor had written down on the piece of paper. And this should concern you, because if you're seeing that there at the VA, that's essentially what we're going to see through Obamacare and through this new edict with this executive order, which is being challenged. Another thing along the lines of hospitals, an interesting report I read yesterday, and I sort of know this, but it was interesting, the report that came out. It essentially talked about emergency rooms and how they're facing severe shortages of drugs. And when I read this article, I got a better understanding of what the problem is, which I didn't have. I knew there was an issue. I didn't understand the crux of it. And they put out this new study by the Academic Emergency Medicine, and it shows that drug shortages across the board in ERs throughout the United States, and how they've increased about 400% over the last 13 years. And they essentially come out and said there's just about 1,800 shortages that have been reported, and about 34% were used in emergency rooms. So a lot of it's occurring in our ERs, which is a bad thing, because that's generally where they need them primarily. And these are real shortages. They're happening, and they're getting worse according to the individuals that are out there. And they give various reasons to these shortfalls, and some are the manufacturing delays, which account for 25%, supply and demand, availability of the raw material, business decisions, and a few other issues out there. But what could not, what they stated is this: in the last few years, they talked to this guy, and he said emergency medicine has changed, and it's been a disturbing trend. Basically, medicine is found most useful. Medicines that he finds most useful, as well as life-saving, have been disappearing off the counters. And he says the shortages are frequent, they're a nuisance. And it all comes down to this 2003 law. And basically this 2003 law came in and changed the formula for which you can base your average selling price of drugs on over a 6-month period. So you had most private insurance out there, they followed suit. They said, okay, we need to adjust this. And what it effectively did is limit the amount of by which the price of the drug could rise in response to the market conditions out there. So the drug companies, which are in it for profit, decided, okay, we need to start looking at the drugs, and the ones that are unprofitable now because of this new law, we're going to have to not make them, not make as much. And that's going to be in there. It's basically price controls is what it led to, and the price controls are leading to the shortage that we're seeing out there. You got other federal pricing controls that also contribute to it. You got a program out there where it forces makers to give deep discounts to facilities treating a number of indigent and Medicaid patients, and manufacturers take a hit on that. And Obamacare just exacerbated that whole problem. It vastly increased the number of Americans that are eligible for Medicaid, and it also expands the number of facilities that qualify for the discounts. And thirdly, it created this independent payment advisory board who their overall task is to keep Medicare spending down by recommending reimbursement cuts. And so they're cutting, and you're seeing that impact the drug market. And unfortunately, that's impacting each and every one of us. Impacting each and every one of us. Sorry, I was looking for this new article I wanted to pull while trying to talk. I got to actually pull a couple on it because I wanted to talk a little bit about that whole ban on solidarity that Obama is proposing. It's a good thing, I think. Obama said that the solitary confinement of our kids is an affront to humanity. I got to agree with him on this. Basically, he's out there and he said we're going to ban the solitary confinement of juveniles and low-level offenders in U.S. federal jails. It's a measure the ACLU applauded, of course. They came out and said, hey, this is going to save thousands of lives because needless suffering and permanent damage, psychological damage, happens to individuals, especially kids that you're throwing in solitary confinement. When Obama was out there, he was talking about Khalif Browder. As a 16-year-old, he went to Rikers Island for stealing a backpack. He spent the next 3 years there in solitary confinement, awaiting a trial. This is no trial. He has not been deemed guilty. And in June, he went ahead and 2 years after his release, he committed suicide. And so this brought up that whole controversial issue of isolating a person for 23 hours a day. And is it overused like in Khalif's position? So he came out with this reform and banning solitary confinement, which is a good thing. But like I said, basically it will impact about 10,000 federal prisoners. 10,000 federal prisoners. And all the relevant federal agencies out there will be required to review the measures and craft their own plans on how they can better the whole solitary confinement process. And it estimates that between 80 to 100,000 people are being held in isolation in solitary confinement. A large portion of them are serving out long terms. Some of them are kids. And human rights advocates have long said that solitary confinement is a form of torture. And they've looked upon the criminal system negatively in that regard. And so this whole this measure is long in making. And he's become the first, I don't know if you saw it on Vice News, I did, it was interesting, where he went out, Obama visited the prison system. He asked questions about the isolation. And basically, ever since then, he released, 6,600 prisoners that he felt weren't harmful, that they were crime didn't fit the sentence, or the sentence didn't fit the crime type stuff. Let them go. And now you're seeing this action. And with that, I started looking in a little bit further, and I came across another article, which to me is one of the cruxes of the issue, and it's the corporatization of our prison system. Let me tell you what I mean. You got more and more Americans, from both sides of the hall, Democrat and left, Republican right. They all agree that our criminal justice system is broken with stuff like sending children into solitary confinement. Even Newt Gingrich, he says we can no longer afford business as usual. And you got these mass incarcerations that they're neither cost effective for taxpayers nor for the communities. But what we're seeing is the private correction industry. They're out there, and they're made up of companies that are for profit. And they are for profit when people are within the prison system. And so you're going to have to fight these corporate big donors for these changes. Private companies profit from nearly every function out there in our criminal justice system, folks. And the industry scope is, some may say it's startling. They perform prison operation, immigration detention, even GPS ankle monitoring, residential reentry. The list goes on how privatization, the companies like CCA or the GEO group, how they go out, they operate these prisons. Numerous companies with similar track records go out there and they provide services like healthcare, food, prison transport. And they have a history of providing low quality services, harming not only the prisoners, but the community and taxpayers as well. And people don't care because they see it only as harming the prisoners, and they're like, well, these guys deserve it. They got that overall mentality. But they don't. They're human beings. And we already know that the industry out there cuts corners, and they do it to make a profit. And what that leads to is more prison violence, lawsuits, accidents, high staff turnover. And it's becoming much more clearer that the system is influenced by private companies, which drive the profit that we're seeing within the prison system. And so there's a new campaign out there, and it's try to replace these private profits companies with public funded one, managed programs. I don't know if we're going to see it. It's going to be a tough battle to climb. Because, you know, we need a system that addresses the root cause of the crime rather than one that locks away the symptoms and hopes they never get loose, because each and every person means a significant amount of dollars to the company that's managing the prison system. Every dollar in profit for a private correction facility is a dollar that could be invested in building a more moral and cost-effective criminal system that doesn't harm the prisoners, that better serves the communities, better serves the taxpayers and the working families that are out there. This is all stuff that you need to look at, that we need to consider, folks. Let me see. I think that's it for today. I think I'm near my 50-minute mark where I try to go 50 to 60 minutes. I could talk about other stuff, but since I do it for free, I'm not a 3-hour show. If I was doing it for money, I'd be a 3-hour show. All right, and I'd have a lot better production than what you're seeing. All right, remember to visit the uncensoredreport.com. That is where you can find the stories that I find near and dear, that I enjoy reading, and also you have access to my local stories, the local scoop pages from there. Also, you get stories that I've written in different video productions, stuff like that. The Scoop National News is a little bit different on there. I put a lot of the fluff. You have to put a lot of these fluff pieces because that's what draws the traffic, and that's why I'm so close, this far off of having a reach of 750,000 people a week, which I used to be 20,000 before I started doing the fluff. So it shows you the disparity there. This has been Francesco Abbruzzino with the Uncensored Report. Everybody have a great day.